Hello, CTA family. The Compete Mentality podcast will host basketball coaches, players, and trainers from all around the state of Indiana, country, and world. The mission of the Compete Mentality podcast is to motivate, educate, and lead others in their faith, basketball, and personal journey to compete. Our definition of competing is doing what God is calling you to do, even when it is hard. No matter what area of life it is in, we are all called to compete. And ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute pleasure to have on the podcast today head coach of the Huntington University Foresters, Coach Kory Alford. Kory, thanks for joining us today, man.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely. And Coach, I want to hear a little bit, if you could introduce yourself to our listeners today. Just kind of give us a snapshot of where you got to where you are today, man.
Yeah, kind of a long story, but essentially grew up in a basketball family. My
Slightly.
my dad and grandpa both well-known basketball coaches. My grandpa on the high school level here in the state, and then my dad started out at Manchester and then has traveled kind of around the country. But I was born in Warsaw, so just up the road here in Indiana, and then always had family here back home in Indiana. So I then, at the age of 2 or 3, followed my dad around. So I went to Missouri, Iowa, ultimately Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I went to high school, where I met my wife. Went to New Mexico for 2 years, and then transferred to UCLA to be a walk-on, where my dad took that job. And then so I finished out my degree and then joined the staff as a video coordinator, video and analytics coordinator. Was there for 4 years and then spent my last year at Nevada with him as director of player development. So I just had great experience following him. Always knew I wanted to get into coaching, always had my eyes set on the small school level and knew I wanted to be a head coach at a young age. And so when the Huntington opportunity kind of came about, I knew it was a perfect fit for me, and luckily it was a good fit the other way. And it's been a lot of fun these last few months, just kind of diving into everything.
No doubt. And you guys are having an unbelievable season, and you guys are really catching a hot streak right now and starting to click and play. And it's been really fun to watch. We'll dive into more of that. But, man, what an experience you were able to have just as a kid around the game of basketball and growing up around the game. And basketball's taken you all over the place. And you've been able to eat at some really nice places on some university dime. And as trainers, Courtney and I, we are, as much as we love to train people, we're also huge foodies. We love our food and we love a good restaurant. So give me one restaurant that's unique you've been at and is one of the best meals you've had.
That's a tough one. Living out in LA for 5 years really spoiled me from that standpoint. Man, I could talk restaurants with you for the next hour if you wanted
For
to.
sure.
But I'd probably go with either Nobu. I'll go with Nobu for sushi out in LA. That's probably my favorite.
Nobu for sushi. What kind of rolls you getting?
They got everything. You kind of got. It's one of those places you just trust the chef. Whatever they're bringing out, you go for it.
Man,
So you don't get much of a say.
that's right. That's right. That's
But
good
yeah,
stuff.
it's I've been blessed. Gotten to go to Australia twice. Went to China. So been able to travel kind of the world and been able to play in all kinds of great arenas across the country. We won a game at Rupp Arena. So that was a special time. Being able to play with my brother, coach my brother, and then play under my dad and coach with him. Definitely a special upbringing that I've had, and just being able to be in a college basketball locker room for my entire life, I think just kind of gives me a different, unique perspective. I've been through everything. I've been around it. And so there's nothing that I see in the locker room now that's my locker room that I just haven't seen throughout my 28 years, because that's all I've ever known. So from October to April, it's been this grind, just kind of for my entire life. So it's definitely unique, but I'm blessed to have been able to go through it.
No doubt about it. And how old are you now? 20.
I'm 28.
28. That's what I thought. 28. and we've had a lot of pretty high level coaches and hoopers on this podcast, and I would guess that you've been to the most locker rooms and arenas just with your background and your upbringing. So I want to hear. I want to dive into arenas and locker rooms here for a second,
Sure.
and I want to hear the most hostile crowd away arena that you've ever had to play in.
All right. Most hostile that we played in. Rupp isn't super hostile, but it's a lot of people. That's like 24,000 people. So Rupp was different. At Arizona was always pretty wild. They have a great crowd. Growing up as a kid, I always remember Iowa State. That place always was rocking whenever we'd go there with Iowa.
Yep.
But yeah, those are probably the top ones. Arizona was definitely the one in the Pac-12, and San Diego State in the Mountain West.
Sure.
Viejas always got rocking. And it's weird now with COVID, watching all these games with no fans, and you see these empty arenas. It's just not the same. But hopefully we'll be back.
We will.
Hopefully we'll be back soon.
Absolutely. I'm staying positive there. And then locker room. What's the best locker room you've ever been in? And just kind of paint a picture for our audience of the best locker room you've ever been in.
Best locker rooms are probably when you stay in the NBA arenas. So we played at the Brooklyn Nets, their new one that they had just opened. That locker room was pretty high level.
What's in it? What's in it?
They just got everything. It depends on which locker room you get. So they got like 6 locker rooms. So you just know they got all the amenities, hot tubs, cold tubs, TVs, all that stuff. It's funny because we were at a locker room. I don't even know what school it was, but it was really small a couple weeks ago. And one of my players was like, "They don't give you this at D1, do they, coach?" And I was like, honestly, you guys would be surprised at what some of the visitors' locker rooms look like because they are terrible. So I described some of them to them, but I was like, it's not much different, guys. There are some that are good, but it's not always that way.
For sure. They're not always going to treat the opponent like they are their team. There's no doubt about that. I've even heard of like some places like painting the visiting team's locker room pink. Like
that's how Iowa was when we were there. The visitors. I don't know if they still do it or not. I don't know if it's accepted in 2020, but they did used to do that.
For sure. Coach, I want to kind of transition into training specifically. So we got a lot of hoopers listening to this podcast, and I just kind of want to hear, like, when you get a player, what's your training philosophy? How are you kind of walking them through becoming a better player?
Yeah, so I think for one, when it comes to like basketball specific training, I'm a big believer that every player is different. I don't try to act like I know all the answers. I really do think everyone's different and they're all going to respond to different types of training. So I try not to get caught up in one way or my way is the highway. That I just try to be open to everything. But I do have my ideas on what I think is successful and how to shoot and certain things like that. But I think when you're training somebody, the best thing you can do is just be honest with them and use a lot of positive reinforcement. And just one, you got to build that trust. If they don't trust you, doesn't matter what you're selling them, they're not going to buy into it.
Right.
And so I think building the trust first, letting them believe that you're there for them, you want them to get better. You're just trying to help them get to that point. And then I think you just got to use a bunch of different training methods, whether that's on the court, whether that's watching film, whether that's showing them, slowing it down, just breaking everything down to pieces, or just taking them into live play and seeing how they adapt to that type of situation. Because I think that's a problem we run into a lot with training is you can get as good as you want dribbling around cones or going at chairs, but at the end of the day, you got to be able to adapt your training to real basketball. And I think if you aren't doing that in a one-on-one, two-on-two session, I do think there's a time and place for individual skill work and training. You do have to do that, especially as you're younger. I think as you're growing up, middle school,
Yep.
high school age, you really have to spend a lot of time with that. But once you get to college, we spend a lot of time actually going at bodies,
Yeah.
because that's what translates to the game. And we spend our time doing two ball dribble, and we do skill work stuff. We do spend a lot of time with shooting, but I think it's more beneficial the more live action training that you can get, just because that's where you have to be able to perform at a high level.
No doubt about it. And I think you made a really awesome point at the beginning of, and I've been able to visit one of your practices and seen this firsthand of, man, you just got this genuine and demeanor about yourself. And it really doesn't matter how much you know or until a player really knows how much you care. And it's really cool for me to see that and you develop that trust with your players and see that they know that you believe in them and trust them. I think that's really cool. So, Coach, I want to dive into your season a little bit. Um, you've won 3 of your last 4, and man, I've watched all these games, and it really seems like you guys are kind of clicking and hitting your stride right now. And just kind of paint a picture to our audience of why that's happening on your team right now.
Yeah, so it's just been an unbelievable, unique year with COVID. And obviously, it's my first season coaching, so I'm learning on the fly. They're getting used to everything. It's a brand new system, all of that. But more than anything, I think it's a team that showed up in August, um, really hungry, and they wanted to learn. And their buy-in from day one has been incredible for me to see. Um, and just through the whole off season, we just kept getting better. And throughout October, like, to be honest, when we showed up and we had our first 2, 3 weeks, we were a very, very poor defensive team. We had some skill offensively, but we didn't know how to play yet. But we couldn't guard.
Right.
And our growth throughout the month of October, and really starting with Caleb Middlesworth, because I challenged him early. Um, he needed to improve defensively, and we were just going to follow his lead. And he really bought in and became a much better defender. And so I think it started with that. But anyways, we got through October. We had a great preseason. We were really trying to get through those practices without getting quarantined, because we knew how important that preseason was, for this young team. We have one senior on the team. And we just really needed those preseason practices with a new foundation that we were putting in. Then we got off to a good start, 6-0. We had some good wins. Um, and then we hit a quarantine where we took 2 weeks off, and we came out of it and started Crossroads League play. And
Uh,
it's my first time going through Crossroads League. I've seen it on film. But until you really go through it, it's the number one NAIA conference in the country for a reason. High level coaches, high level players. And we came out and we beat Spring Arbor. We made everything that night. And so I think that kind of set us up for a little bit of failure going forward, just because the guys got a little bit comfortable. So then we dropped one to Mount Vernon at home, last second shot. Knox kid hit a really tough
yeah.
shot on the
Yeah.
baseline. Then we go to Goshen and beat them, and then lost at Iowa pretty bad down at their place. And so just kind of the start of the season was good, but I thought in the middle of that time, we kind of plateaued. Our growth started, it wasn't like we were getting worse, but we just stopped improving. And part of that was we couldn't practice the way we wanted to.
Sure.
It
Sure.
got hard after that quarantine, with so many games in a week, to where we couldn't really continue to improve. Um, so we ended up having a break, come back, played one game and won. And then we were looking at the hardest stretch of our season. We had at St. Francis, who was number 20 in the country,
Yep.
at Marion, number 10. Then you got the number one team in Indiana Wesleyan coming here, and then we played Grace.
Yep.
And so we're looking at that 4-game stretch. I think we were 2-2 in the league at the time. And so we were going to find out a lot about ourselves. Hardest stretch of our season, really good opponents, and a lot of them away from home. And so we went to St. Francis, and we really played, I thought, our worst game of the year. Just no real heart, no effort. just in timeouts, I felt like we didn't have life. And it was kind of discouraging at the time just because I didn't know how we were going to come out of that. I mean, we go to Marion like 3 days later, and it felt like we just didn't believe in ourselves. I was like, guys, you're not going to give yourself a chance to win if you don't believe that you can win. And so just in talking to the guys over the next day or two, what I gathered was it wasn't that they didn't believe, it was that they just felt like they had to do everything so perfect to beat these teams that they were just like paralyzing their minds. And so what I did for 2 days, we just started putting like 45 minutes up on the clock and we just competed. Like there wasn't as much structure to the practice. It was like, we're running for defensive mistakes, but we're going 45, let's go. And luckily our Marion game got moved from a Saturday to a Monday, because of COVID.
Right.
And so it let me practice them a little bit harder than I typically would have on Thursday, Friday.
Right.
And I don't think without those practices, we are where we are right now, because I really think it helped our mindset. It helped us kind of get back on track. But a lot of it was just reiterating that, look, guys, we're not that far off. Yes, these are the top 20, top 10 teams in the country. But we don't have to play perfectly to beat them. We need perfect effort. We need to execute. And we do have to have some things go our way. But we're a good team and we have good players and we put the work in to put ourselves in that position. But if you don't have perfect effort, you're not going to give yourself a chance. And so we went down to Marion, and I thought we played the best game we played all year effort-wise. We didn't even make shots. Our best player, Caleb Middlesworth, fouls out in 10 minutes. He doesn't score a point, and we win on the road on the last second shot. And so if I could like have drawn up anything to make them believe that you don't have to play perfectly, that was it.
That was it.
And so I really think that was a big turning point for us. And we're going to probably have another tough stretch coming up. But it's just such a young team that it's been exciting seeing them kind of learn through it all. And I'm learning, my staff's learning. It's been a great year and it's been a lot of fun, but hopefully we can keep it going because we've had some real good growth, especially the last few weeks. And
absolutely,
it just doesn't get any easier in this conference.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. But buy stock now in the Foresters. I love hearing how you guys had developed this mindset through this stretch. Coach, we have a saying around the barn that mindset is greater than skill set. And I many times you guys are a very talented team. You can have the talent, but if you don't have that mindset, that perfect effort you're talking about, execution, skill set, doesn't matter. You got to have that mindset.
Yeah, we have six like culture things on our wall. It all ties into the chop wood mentality, where we're just focused on the process. It's the tree doesn't fall in one hit. You got to keep working at it daily, and you got to fall in love with that kind of idea of just daily work habits that you're building. But one of them is have a growth mindset and embrace failure. We're not afraid of failure. We see it as an opportunity, and that's what I want our guys doing. And then another one that ties into what you talk about a lot is compete on every play and make no excuses. I just think if you can get to those two consistently as a team, your team's going to keep getting better, and you're going to end up finding yourself at a growth point where you didn't think you could even get to.
Absolutely. That'll preach right there, Coach. Coach, I got a lot of hoopers trying to play at the college level right now. Training a lot of high school players. Courtney's training a lot of high school players that are listening to this podcast. Just explain to us really kind of what you look for in a recruit to ultimately that they'll sign to be a Forester. What kind of qualities do they have to have?
Yeah, I think a lot goes into it. The biggest thing is fit. And I think some programs do this more than others. Some are just trying to get the most talent or the most size. Everybody does it a little bit differently. We have a vision for where we want to get to and the style of play that we want to play. And so for us, some of it comes down to position, but just a couple traits that we always look for is high motor, competing on every play. I do like high skill. Being able to shoot the ball is important for me in our offense, or high athleticism, especially from the five spot. We want either a guy who can stretch the floor or a guy who can rim run,
Yep.
and kind of open up the floor that way. And so I think a lot of it comes down to offensive fit and then how well you can defend. And more importantly on that end is defend multiple positions.
Hmm.
I tell our guys a lot, if you want to play more minutes for me, be able to guard multiple positions. Because if you get locked into being able to guard one spot, that's where your minutes get limited. If you can only guard a five, if we got another guy that can play the five, you don't have another place you can slide to. So we got guys on our team that'll slide around, and those guys get to play more minutes because they can guard a three, they can guard a four, they can guard a five, and we can change things up, and you can be a part of different lineups. But if you can only guard one position, it really limits how well you can defend and stay on the court, at least for us. But yeah, I think a lot of that, and then just being able to communicate well. I think that's hit or miss a lot of times with prospects. Some guys are really good at. And it's not even about texting back a ton, but just when we come to the games, take the time to have conversations. And a lot of times you're talking to the parents, you're talking to the coaches, but the connection with the kid is what is most important because that's what once they get here, that's where you got to be most comfortable. I don't end up coaching their AAU coach or coaching their parents, right? So, and I think it's important for the kids to get to know their coaches that they want to go play for because that's who you're going to be with for the next 4 years. So build that relationship, and then go wherever the fit is right, wherever you feel like you're going to be happy playing 4 years of college basketball, and know that that goes by quick, but it's a lot of fun and it'll be memories that you'll keep forever.
Absolutely, no doubt about it, Coach. I really love that you're hitting on the point there on defensive versatility, being able to guard multiple positions, and that's something we take pride in at CTA. I mean, a lot of trainers, you're coming in, you're working on your offensive game, right? But we really want to help players elevate their defensive game as well because, I mean, I love hearing you say that's how you're going to get more minutes with me is your defensive versatility. So just kind of describe to us what it takes to be a good defender. To
Yep.
paint a picture for our clients of, hey, this is really what it takes to get it done on the defensive end.
Yep. So I think number one is just effort. You got to play on that end of the floor with the same effort you do offensively. All right. I think for us, the prime example of somebody figuring it out defensively for us is Mitchell Wilson.
Absolutely.
Um, he's a freshman who came in, was behind some other guards, was playing not limited minutes early, but about 10, 15 minutes, spotty here or there. Can really score it. He's all-time leading scorer in Columbia City high school history. Um, but in my opinion, came in as a very poor defender. If you would have asked me in September and October how much Mitchell will play, I would have said, he's probably not ready yet. He's still figuring out how to guard. And right now, if you watch us play, he's one of the few that stand out defensively. He takes the most charges on our team. He understands our team defensive philosophy. He's in his help spots, and he comes in and watches film religiously with us.
Mm.
And so he's known where his weaknesses are, and he's taken the time to work on them and improve. And so I think to be a good defender, one, you got to understand what your team concept is. And that's my job to build that around the personnel, right? So we don't have the most athletic team in the world. I would love to switch five ways all the time. We don't have that. And so we have a system that's built in where you know where your help spots are. You know where your rotations are. I'm not asking them to guard 5, 6, 7 dribbles, multiple directions. They know where they're supposed to force the ball or influence it to. But there's certain things that we don't, we have non-negotiable stuff that we just don't allow. Uncontested shots, drive from certain areas, blow-bys, no box outs. We teach verticality at the rim. We teach taking charges outside the charge arc. And so certain things like that, our pick and roll coverages, they know what we're doing there. Our post defense coverages, they know what we're doing there. And so it's a lot and it takes time. But I do think with film walkthroughs, and then like we talked about practicing live. And the other thing with defense, I like to be very consistent throughout the year. One thing I don't like is changing, say, a month or month and a half into the season and you feel like you're not guarding well, changing it up. I just think that that's asking to fail defensively. I think it's something that's a process that you got to just continue to work on. And if you want to reevaluate things after the year, that's one thing. And you can make tweaks. We've made tweaks throughout the year that are simple, whether that's how we're guarding the post or how we're guarding a pick and roll in certain teams.
Right.
But our main foundation, the things that we've talked about from day one and worked on since August 15th with these guys is the exact same. Our shell drill looks the exact same. And I think that's important, just building the little habits because it's not easy. Defense isn't easy.
No.
But I think also it's about understanding you're not going to stop them every time, right? There's never been a game where you hold an opponent to 0. And so there's no reason to freak out every time a team scores on you. But if they score on our terms, if they score, we're forcing it to this spot or they hit a contested jumper, we're big on analytics. So if you hit a mid-range shot on us and we're contesting it, I don't really care. You can do it all night long. And I know that the numbers favor us in the long run.
Right.
But I just think getting the guys to understand that I'm not going to get upset at them if their guy scores either. It's a team effort defensively, right? It's 5 guys.
Right.
And
Right.
so if you force your guy to this spot and somebody doesn't help you, that's not on you. And so it's getting the teammates to trust each other, that their help is going to be there when they get beat or when they force the ball to a certain area. But it's all got to be as a team. All 5 have to be working together. And that's where I think film comes in. If you aren't teaching through film, I think it's really hard to get that buy-in because once they see it, film doesn't lie. It's very clear, and I think it exposes a lot of weakness.
Absolutely. And I think that's you hit on a lot of good points there. And guys, really what it comes down to being a good defender, like Coach Alford said, is just that effort. You got to want it. Coach, competing for us is doing what God calls you to do, even when it's hard. Life has its ups and downs. The game has its ups and downs, but you just got to keep fighting. You got to keep pressing. And I want to hear a story from you where you experienced some adversity in life or someone you know experienced some adversity in your life and you made it through because you competed and you came out on the other side as a better person. So tell us about a situation like that.
Yeah, I've been truly blessed in my life. I really haven't had kind of anything throughout my playing career or coaching career that I could point to that was really a major point of adversity. Obviously, many things throughout, wins and losses. And I think as a coach, you really try to stay even, get too high or too low with the joys and the downs that you face. But I think a big one in my family, at least adversity wise, was my dad being fired at UCLA. Ultimately, our staff, we stayed on for the 2 months and finished out that year. And then we all moved on from there. But that was just a unique time and I think experience for all of us to go to. Basically taking on a failure. You were fired from your job despite how many successes we had. There were bright spots, there were good times, there were good seasons.
For sure.
But it's a really hard job with a lot of pressure. And in the end, it just didn't work out. And so I think having that perspective, seeing my dad go through it, he took those 2 months off, went around to different programs, really studied what other coaches are doing, went to see Michigan State, Kentucky, Tennessee, Duke, some of his friends in the industry. But I think that goes back into our having a growth mindset and embracing failure, that he just felt like that was a unique time for him where he was going to have a few months off during a college basketball season that he had never had in his life.
Right.
And so he took advantage of it, made the most of it. And then you waited till the spring. The way college basketball coaching works, it's very unique. I always tell people, at least when I was at the D1 level, you kind of know where you're going to be at until the spring, and then you reevaluate and figure out where you're
No
living.
doubt.
So me and my wife, we ended up moving to Reno after I had a couple of interviews for head coaching positions. I was a finalist for 2 jobs and didn't end up getting them. So that wasn't major adversity, but it was a little bit
Yeah,
of a bummer because I felt like I was ready at the time.
for sure.
And looking back now, I'll tell
Right.
you, I wasn't ready. I needed that year in Reno, to truly develop a few more skills because I took on a different role, more of an operations role, a role where I kind of dealt with, supporters of the program and alumni more, and then people across campus. And I think my 1 year in Reno really helped prepare me for this head coach position. And so I think that was God just kind of giving me some, practice
Mm.
interview wise.
Yeah.
And he also teaching me about the Crossroads League so that I knew really where I wanted to be. Um, and then ultimately the Huntington job opened and, it worked out perfectly in the end. But yeah, I think responding to adversity and just seeing anything like that as an opportunity instead of an obstacle, is really the best way to do it. And some things are easier than others. There's real adversity that people face, and I think it's important just to be there for those people and, provide a resource, provide a shoulder to lean on, in those times of need.
That's so cool. I love the takeaway there that we really got to embrace adversity. It's so cool to hear how you and your dad in those situations really just embraced adversity. And uh, we like to say there's no losses in the barn. They're learns. Our L's are learns. They're not losses. You got to embrace those. So, Coach, talking more, and I just think it's so cool your background and your true appreciation for all levels of basketball now, with you being at the very highest level of college basketball and now in the Crossroads League. And I had the opportunity as well to be a part of Purdue men's basketball and see that level of basketball firsthand as well. And I want to make a statement here. I want to see if you agree with me, and feel free to not, that I truly believe in the Crossroads League level, in the Crossroads League conference, that there can be just as high or higher skill sets than there are at the high major programs. What do you think about that?
That's absolutely correct. Just from a shooting standpoint, I think as you go up in level, athleticism, and length is really what changes things. Just bigger guys, stronger guys, um, and more athletic. That's really what it comes down to. But if you look at the 3-point percentages at our level versus their level, ours is typically higher, especially at the top, at the Crossroads League level. I think we have almost every single team in our league shoots over 35% from three. Like it's
Correct.
crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think, and part of that is lower athleticism, right? The
Right.
contested shots aren't there. Like if we played in the Big
Yeah.
Ten, we wouldn't shoot 35% from three.
That's true too.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all comparable, but I enjoy watching it. I enjoy scouting it and I enjoy coaching in it. Um, and there's times where the Division 1 level isn't pretty to watch. There's times where the NBA is not pretty to watch, despite it being the highest skill of all. Um, but I just love the competitiveness. Being in a conference like this, it's like being in the Big 12 or Big 10, where every single night is just an elite opponent. You can go through stretches where you're playing 3, 4 ranked teams in a row, and you can't get down. You just got to keep trying to grow through it. But it's a lot of fun to watch and a lot of fun to be a part of.
No doubt about it. Hey, Coach, as we kind of wrap up here, I want to give our listeners kind of some leadership advice. So, kind of changing the topic to leadership specifically. If you're looking at players, at recruits, at your team, and you're saying that player's a leader, uh, what qualities do they have as a leader?
Yeah, I think, being able to communicate, being able to also listen and understand where teammates are coming from, being able to kind of be a coach on the court, lead by example on and off the court. Um, but I think the big thing is just being the guy that's not afraid to hold another teammate accountable, but also do so in a way that um, they're holding themselves to the same standards.
Right.
I think that's important when you're building that trust. You can't just be the one that's calling everybody else out. But I think being able to communicate, being able to set the standard on the court and off the court, and then just being able to listen and kind of understand where people are coming from and showing empathy and not acting like you know all the answers all the time.
Absolutely. Those are amazing qualities to define a leader. And Hoopers out there today, take that to heart. You don't have to be the best player to be a leader, is what that's telling me right now, how Coach Alford defined a leader right there. You don't have to be the best player, but you can be a leader by controlling what you can control, by giving that max effort that Coach Alford's talking about, by being willing to step up and call somebody out when you need to, but you have that platform of trust, and you have that platform of, hey, you gave everything you had, and you put in the time and effort as well. So CTA family, thank you so much for joining us today. Coach Alford, thank you so much for sharing your time. This was an absolute blast. I learned so much today. I'm here with the Word document open, taking notes and one-liners from you that I've loved to learn today. So thank you so much for having us, man.
Jordan, thank you. Appreciate all you're doing. We'll be in touch soon.
Absolutely. And CTA family, always remember that competing is doing what God is calling you to do, even when it's hard.